Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Gail Carson, your host for Women in Business, a show that celebrates women and their accomplishments as entrepreneurs or senior managers. As a woman business owner for over 5 decades, I take great pride in bringing these interviews to you. I'm also president of the SOB clubs, so if any of you are interested in going to one in your area, please contact me and let me know. My guest today is Beth Sobol. She's recognized as one of the world's premier fashion show producers, and her own contributions to launching the careers of the world's top marketing and emerging designers is unparalleled. An international fashion model for over 20 years, she worked for many of the world's top fashion houses in more than 40 countries in the U.S., Europe, South America, and Far East before launching Miami Fashion Week in 1999. She's just recently sold that enterprise and now is focusing on a whole new chapter in her life, the Council of International Fashion Designers. Always being one of her passions, the Council has potential to transform designers from other nations into favored style icons amongst America. The Council of International Fashion Designers is established to educate and empower international emerging and established fashion and accessory designers on the industry's business practices in the American market. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here.
Well, you have just been a little busy beaver in the last couple of months.
I certainly have.
I think we should start talking about how you basically even got started in business. You started as a model, and of course I know a lot about that because for 21 years I had one of the top modeling agencies in Miami. So how did you get into the modeling business, and then take us on that journey from there to here?
Well, actually, I was 19 when I started modeling. They had a career day at my high school, and one of the opportunities was a modeling school. So I went through a 6-month course in about 2 weeks, and they put me on the runway, and I continued on for 20 years. I modeled locally in Miami with all the major department stores who were bringing in the designers from around the world. And in 1 week, I did shows in Miami and in Palm Beach, and there were 2 designers from Paris at the different stores, and they both asked me to go back to Europe and do their couture shows. So a month later, I found myself on an airplane and basically came back 20 years later.
And you were how old when this all happened? You said 19?
I was 19 when I first started modeling locally, and then I was actually 25 when I left for the first time to go to Europe.
And you need to know that I have met Beth, and she's a lovely, lovely, beautiful woman. How tall are you, Beth?
5'11".
She's 5'11", and she always wears heels. And, of course, me at my 5'1.5", you can imagine, and I wear flats. So it's like Mutt and Jeff when we're together. However, she is really a magnificent, magnificent woman, both in mind and spirit. So you went from modeling to producing fashion shows, right?
Yes, exactly. When I retired from modeling, I moved back to Florida, which is my home. And at the time, I was a single mother with 2 small children, and I needed to decide what was I going to do. So when I came back to Florida, my old modeling clients found out that I was home, and they started calling, asking me to model for them again. I said, no, I don't want to do that anymore. They said, well, why don't you produce our shows? I said, okay, I can do that. And after 20 years of working with, some of the world's, top, designers and fashion choreographers and production companies, you learn something. And I was always one between the shows to be hanging around with the lighting guys and the choreographers and the music guys and just, kind of learning what their job in the entire productions that I was a model in. So my first production clients became were my old modeling clients. So they were Chanel, Escada, Fendi, St. John, all of the designer, stores, the shopping malls, the fashion magazines, the charities, anybody I had ever worked for as a model became my new production clients. And within the first few months of running my company, I was asked to produce an event in Guayaquil, Ecuador. It was a 2-day event for live television, and the organizers of this event had 21 designers from 12 Latin American countries. I spent 15 days with these guys. They all wanted to come back to Miami. Nobody knew how. And 2 years later, I launched the first Miami Fashion Week and brought them all here.
Well, we've covered a lot of territory in what you've just said. First of all, these people. Now, you dispel our illusions here. These people are not necessarily easy to work with, are they? They're very creative. People say they're very temperamental, and they have opinions of their own. So, how did all that work?
With the designers?
Yes.
Well, I mean, designers are stars. They're all stars, and the designers in Latin America and at the event in Guayaquil, Ecuador, that I was doing, they were all the top designers from their countries. The biggest designers from Colombia, from Chile, from Venezuela. They were all there, and but they were all so intrigued and so interested because at the time, they had not come to the United States. They hadn't entered the market. They hadn't done shows up here, and it was a whole new potential for them. So they were very interested in learning more about what I could do to help them. And when I, came back after this event, I was doing some shows at the Miami International Merchandise Mart. And the owner of the mart came to me and said he wanted me to create something that would really build a new fashionable image for the mart. And I thought about it. I said, what about a fashion week? I just met, 20-something designers in Latin America. And so we can start it with the Latin American designers. He loved the idea. He funded it the first year. And with these, I had 25 designers in total. Carolina Herrera was my first special guest. Angel Sanchez, who is now a huge designer, was my new star in fashion. And the rest were the 21 designers I had met a couple of years earlier.
Now, you did this event for what, 17, 18 years, and
Yes.
you just recently decided to sell that show or that week or that business. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, I did the event by myself for 12 years, completely alone. I outsourced and subcontracted everybody that worked with me. I brought my friends in to be my art directors. I brought my other friends in to be my staff, and just people I had known throughout the industry over the years that had been, working with me, and it became my support staff. But it was all subcontracted. And in 2010, I brought in one partner, which is Aaron Perry. He was a businessman in Miami Beach, and we met and started working together, and he helped to start building the brand. And then a couple of years later, he brought in some other European, investors to work with us. And then after a couple of years with this group from Spain, they wanted to buy the event from us, and they are broadcast content creators. So they are really turning Miami Fashion Week into a television property. That's is their plan. And with that, the time was right. I had been on the event for, nearly 20 years because I worked a little over 2 years to develop the event before I launched the first one. Then we went into 17 years of production. And the time was right and the opportunity was there. So we sold our shares. And Aaron and I have gone on to further develop the Council of International Fashion Designers. And I tell you, this is something early on, and like the first year that I did Miami Fashion Week that I saw was such a need, was the educational component for these designers. Now remember, they are all stars in their own countries, but they don't know how to do business in the American market. And that was a huge void that I saw immediately. So over the years, I've been having seminars and workshops and master classes and all of these things, because when the designers come up, it takes us a few days. We take 4 to 5 days to go through all the model castings, the fittings, the preparations of the shows, the rehearsals, all of this. And in between all the preparations for the shows, I'm throwing in master classes, seminars, workshops to educate these guys on what it's going to take for them to start working in the American market.
I was just going to ask you, okay, so what is it? We know there's a big difference between Latin America, South America, and the States, but what is the biggest lesson that these people have to learn?
And it goes for any country, Europe, any place, because, I work with trade commissioners, ambassadors, consul generals from all over the world as well as the individual designers, and they all have the same issues. So it doesn't matter what country they're from. But the biggest thing is learning the American business etiquette. A perfect example, a designer in Latin America, one of my designers, had an order pending with an American buyer, and he went on vacation. He said, I'll send it when I get back. The store didn't want it anymore. It was late. She needed it 3 weeks ago, not 3 weeks later. So that lost time, that lost money, and it lost the potential for ever selling to that store again.
So, in other words, many of them, they're not on really the same wavelength.
No, business is done differently in every country.
So, if I'm a South American designer and I am working with a leading department store or a leading boutique in the South American or Latin American country that the designer is in, and the designer decides to go on vacation, that store just lives with it.
I guess. The designers are big enough, but they all roll with their own way of doing business down there. But it's different here. If a store is investing their time, their dollars, and space on their rack, they need those clothes when they have that deadline, and not a day later.
So what? Tell me, when you explained this to this particular designer, what was his reaction?
Oh, I said, yeah, you need to ship those things before you go on vacation next time. It was a hard lesson learned.
Right, but
nobody was going to wait on him. He was a star, big star. Nobody's going to wait on you in this market.
And so what other things are you doing with the council now?
Well, we are building a global online business portal for all of the information that these designers from whatever country you're from need in order to enter the American market. And this includes, my preliminary advisory board. I have a retail strategist. I have a lawyer who specializes in fashion law. We have a financial, guy who specializes in funding brands, finding the creative funding resources. And these are all things that these designers need to know. They don't know how to ship their things correctly. I mean, I've got stories upon stories of collections getting caught at the customs border for coming into Fashion Week, and that guy missed his show because he didn't do the paperwork correctly, or something wasn't labeled correctly. And you can't just put it in a box and send it here. There are certain ways to do it. And, we've had some bumps and scratches over the years. I had one designer coming from Lebanon, and that year he was bringing a dress that was worth $1.5 million. But the dress had an overlay of diamonds. The guy was he brought the diamonds in a box with him, but he didn't have any documentation for these diamonds. So he's sitting at the airport on a Sunday night trying to come in for his fitting the next day, calling me at 1 o'clock in the morning, saying the customs won't let him through with his diamonds.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm on the phone trying to find a customs broker at that hour to go to the Miami airport and fish this guy out of customs, which we did.
So he was actually in Miami.
Oh, he got to Miami with his diamonds, and they wanted him to leave the diamonds, and he wouldn't leave his box of diamonds.
I don't blame him.
No, but I had to find a customs broker, to go out at that hour of the morning and get this guy's paperwork in order and get him out of customs.
Well, see, this is something I think our listeners need to know. They think, they certainly, if they haven't been to a designer show, they have heard about them or know what they are. And they just look like they go off flawless. There's a lot of frantic activity backstage with the models and the changing of the dresses and getting them out on time and all of that. But in reality, there's a lot that goes into this. And
there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. Yeah.
So are you going to write a book on all of this?
Oh, absolutely. My life is a book. So I've got a lot to say, and I'm still writing my chapters here. But we'll have the success of the Council of International Fashion Designers. I'm sure is going to be very successful. I've just met the new ambassador from Argentina who arrived in Miami yesterday, and he's very excited. All the trade commissioners that I work with are very excited because this is going to help their job. A story, a couple of weeks ago, I met with the Colombian trade officer. I've known him for several years, and we were just catching up on my new adventures and ventures and business opportunities that we have now. And he was telling me that he just recently hosted a showroom in their offices in Miami. They brought up 20 brands, designer brands from Colombia, and then they contacted all the American buyers that they could find here locally to come in and see these new brands, set up the showroom in their offices. Then they had one store that wanted to buy one of the designers, but then nobody knew how to make that business happen.